The story follows an undercover LAPD officer named Brian O'Connor. Brian is a young and ambitious LAPD officer and car enthusiast who has been tasked with infiltrating a gang of street racers that have been implicated in a series of high-profile truck hijackings. Brian is determined to make a name for himself and prove his worth to his superiors who have assigned him to the case. As he spends more time with the crew, he starts to sympathize with their outlaw lifestyle and questions his own loyalties. Hello, and welcome to IM Movies. The opening scene shows an informant giving details of a truck carrying electronics to hijackers. Soon after the truck left the port, the hijackers starts chasing the truck with black Honda Civic cars. After a while, they gain control and successfully steal the truck. Following the robbery, a police investigation begins. The police decide to infiltrate a street racer gang, so they send Brian O'Connor. We see Brian testing his new car. He is preparing for a big race that's happening that night, but it looks like he needs to learn more about handling that gear. After that, Brian's first move is to visit Toretto's cafe. He meets Mia, Dom's younger sister, and strikes up a conversation, hoping to gain her trust. We see Dominic Toretto standing up to get some beer. While Brian's there, the rest of the gang arrives at the cafe. We see Letty, a girlfriend of Dom. Liam is a lookout for most of the time. Vince, who is a childhood friend of Dom. And Jesse, the brain and mechanic of the team. They notice Brian's truck outside, which they've noticed coming around for a while, so they get suspicious of his presence. Vince approaches Brian and tried to intimidate him, but Letty warns him to stop, and Brian leaves immediately. However, Vince is not satisfied and follows him outside. Vince warns Brian not to come over to the cafe again, but Brian said he liked it there. Vince attacked Brian and the two get into a fight. Mia informs Dom about the fight going on outside and he intervenes. When Dom sees the name of the spare part shop on Brian's truck, he immediately knew where he is working and threatens to get him fired. This is simply because Dom was the company's biggest customer. And when Brian got back to work, his boss gets furious, but Brian tells him to be calm. He, however, tells him he wanted to get a new set of nitrous oxide for his car, but his boss warns him that it could ruin his car because Brian has a heavy foot. That night, Brian takes his newly fixed car to the street car race. The organizer of the race inspects each racing car to check their authenticity. Hector, one of the prominent street racers, notices Brian and approaches him to find out what his car could do. They both introduce themselves and they got along immediately. Meanwhile, everyone was waiting for Dom to come around so they could begin the race, since he was the biggest street racer. Soon after, Dom arrives with his gang and girlfriend. After their arrival, the racers begin to pool in their bets with cash, and Brian joins in, saying he didn't have cash but was willing to part with his car as the price if he loses.
But if I win, I take the cash and I take the respect.
They decide to inspect Brian's car before the race, and they were all amazed by the kind of engine and added feature it had. Dom accepts Brian's offer, and they all head out to begin the race. Then the race begins with Dom in the lead and Brian far back. As the race intensifies, Brian uses his turbo engine to race past the others, including Dom, to take the lead. Shortly after, Brian's car could not hold the speed for long and begins to fail while breaking apart. The system gets heated and burns out close to the end of the race. At this moment, Dom initiates his turbo and fires it, taking back the lead from Brian, whose car was now overheating with smoke. The race ends with Dom winning the prize. As they were all celebrating Dom's win, Brian drives in slowly. The crowds boo at him as they open his car up with smoke oozing out. As Brian comes out of his car, he continues to smile despite losing the race. Dom asked him why he was smiling, and he said it was because he almost had him.
Dude, I almost had you.
Although Dom did not agree with this, they all laughed it off. While they were at it, they got alerted about the presence of the police. Everyone ran away while Brian tailed Dom. Dom managed to escape from the police by quickly parking his car in a parking lot and decides to move on foot. As he was going, a police car spots him. Dom began to run through an alley as Brian came to his rescue and told him to hop into his car. The police continued to chase them, but Brian was able to evade them. Dom thanked Brian for coming to his aid, and they both get to know each other better. Meanwhile, their conversation is interrupted by the sudden appearance of a group of Chinese bikers armed with Uzis, led by Johnny Tran. The Chinese bikers tell Brian to follow them, and Dom immediately knew they were in trouble. When they got to their destination, Johnny reminds Dom of their territory agreement, while he admires Brian's car. Johnny Tran wanted to take the car for himself but later changed his mind, using the opportunity to invite them to a desert car race the following week and then leave with his gang. While Dom was still trying to explain what led to the confrontation to Brian, Johnny Tran and some of his gang returned and started shooting at Brian's car, causing it to explode. Brian and Dom had to take a taxi home. When the taxi dropped them off, Dom asked Brian to spend the night. Meanwhile, Dom's men were holding a party there, and he wasn't happy that they had abandoned him. Shortly after, Brian walked in too, causing Vince to flare up. But Dom quickly backed him up, telling them how Brian had saved him from the police.
"'Cause the buster kept me out of handcuffs!"
Later, Dom leaves the party with his girlfriend and the rest of the gang, begins to tease Brian, but Mia comes to his rescue and takes him away. The next day, Brian was driving when he was taken by some cop to a safe house where the police and FBI are working to identify the truck hijackers. Brian receives a briefing from his boss, Sergeant Tanner, at a police safe house. Brian is tasked with keeping an eye on Dom and his crew, as they are suspected of being involved in the robberies. Later, Brian takes a damaged Toyota Supra to Dom's garage as payment for his loss, but Dom rejects it and instead opted to pay for the car's repair cost so that Brian can race again.
"I gotta get you racing again so I can make some money off your ass."
The next day, Brian buys new parts to fix his damaged Toyota Supra with Jesse, and they both work on it together. Later that day, they all gather for grilled chicken lunch at Dom's place, but Vince refused to stay at first because of Brian's presence, but later came back to join them. However, Vince is still furious about Brian's presence, and the tension between the two men is obvious. Despite the underlying tensions, Mia continues to be friendly towards Brian, teasing Vince and enjoying the newcomer's company.
Well, you can take me there. Friday night at 10. Is that good for you?
The following day, Hector walks into the spare parts store to buy parts for 3 Honda Civic cars. Brian grew suspicious of this purchase and thinks Hector is involved in the robberies. To gather more evidence, he breaks into Hector's garage, but he is caught by Vince and Dom, who followed him. Brian lies and tells them that he's spying on the competition for the upcoming Race Wars, a racing event in the desert. Vince is still suspicious of Brian's motives, but Dom sees the potential benefit of having inside information on their competition. He agrees to let Brian continue his investigation and suggests they break into Tran's garage, which they did.
"Let's go for a little ride."
While inside, Brian spots possible stolen goods. Later, Tran and his gang arrive, and they watch as Tran torture local fence Ted about stolen engines. Brian is torn between his loyalty to the police force and his growing attachment to Dom and his gang. Meanwhile, tension is also on the high side from the police. Brian is asking for more time to work on the case, but his superiors are not having it, stating that the truckers are already planning to take the law into their hands. One of them accuses Brian of getting distracted by Dom's sister, and Brian gets furious. Meanwhile, Mia and Brian finally go on a date. After that, Mia decided to show Brian her driving skill. At the same time, another robbery was going on. Later that night, Brian gets a call from his boss that they are moving in on Tran in the morning. The next morning, police began to round up Tran's gang members, and then they move on to arrest Tran in his father's house. His father hit him in the face as he was disappointed in him. However, Tran and his gang were later released because the suspicious goods were purchased legally by Tran. Sergeant Tanner cautions Brian about falling for Mia and tells him Dom is the next suspect.
"It's Toretto, Brian. It always has been Toretto."
Brian and Dom go out to eat. While eating, he tells Dom that he wants to join him in whatever he is doing. Dom hands him directions and a ticket to Race Wars. Dom says he needs to prove himself first before he can decide whether to let him in or not. Meanwhile, at the Race Wars location, Letty engages in a quick race with a guy for a cash prize and she wins. After that, Jesse decides to race Johnny Tran, staking his father's car. Brian warns him not to do it, but he refused. Tran wins the race, but Jesse ran away with his car. Tran confronts Dom and asks him to get his prize car from Jesse, but Dom is not having any of it. Tran goes ahead to accuse him of sending SWAT to his home. Dom immediately hits him in the face, and they both get in a fight.
"I never knocked on nobody!"
Later that night, Mia begs Dom not to go on another robbery, but he insists. Meanwhile, Brian watched the two as they argued. After Dom left, Brian asks Mia what the problem was, but she didn't want to tell him. He confesses to her that he was a cop and that Dom would be in trouble if they don't stop him. She was confused at first but later agrees, and they both head out to find Dom and the rest of the gang. Brian had to ask the police to trace Dom's number so he could get to him before they do. Before the robbery, Letty feels something was not right, but Dom was not having all that. So they get on the road and begin the robbery. But it didn't go as planned, as Vince was badly injured during the chase while dangerously hanging on the truck. The truck driver had a gun with him, and he fires several shots at them. Letty tries to save Vince, but she is thrown out of the road and crashes, and Leon goes to rescue her. Dom's car heats up and could not keep up with the truck. Fortunately, Brian and Mia come to Vince's rescue and pull him from the truck. While they tend to his wounds, Dom arrives at the spot, while Brian tells them how urgent they need an ambulance. Brian makes a call to the police department asking for medical help for Vince. Dom is shocked to hear that Brian is a cop.
Yeah, this is Officer Brian O'Connor. I'm off duty, MAPD.
A medical helicopter arrives and takes Vince away while Dom, Leon, and Mia head out to the house, and Brian follows behind them. At the house, Brian confronts Dom with his gun, and they both get into a heated argument. Jesse arrives at the house and asks for Dom's forgiveness. Shortly after, Johnny Tran and one of his biker boys arrive and shoot sporadically at them, hitting Jesse several times. Jesse died immediately and the bikers run away. Brian and Dom go after them, and during the chase, they shoot at Brian, who was catching up with them. Dom later managed to hit one of them with his car, and Brian shoots Johnny Tran down. However, he immediately goes after Dom, who was trying to escape. They both stop at a traffic light, and Dom challenges Brian to a chase to beat the train.
On green, I'm going for it.
They both successfully get across, but Dom gets hit by a truck and he crashes. Brian runs to rescue him from the car and hands him the key to his car, and Dom escapes as a police siren is heard in the distance. Throughout the movie, themes of loyalty, family, and betrayal are explored as the characters navigate their relationships with each other and the law. In the end, Brian chooses his newfound family. What do you guys think about this? Let us know in the comments section below. Also, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more.